Hello and welcome to this very special video where we are sharing with you a brand new SUP film, David Haze. David Haze is known as the Nomadic Paddler, and this video dives deep into his history and his current life. It focuses on David's remarkable transformation into the record-breaking paddler and ocean activist he is today, after a background in crime and prison time. This film tells the story of one man's journey of self-discovery and how SUP has influenced David's life for the better. Winner of the 2024 Paddling Film Festival's Best SUP Film, David Haze teaches us to overcome barriers, to seek adventure, and to live a wholesome life, no matter where you've come from. We hope you enjoy it.
When I was serving my second prison sentence, there was a point in there where I thought that was it. But I think the biggest achievement, and I guess the most unexpected achievement, was that I became Ocean Activist of the Year 2023. I went to boarding school from the age of 7 till 18. Went to military school and I always loved being outdoors, loved the sense of adventure. So I always loved sailing, I've always loved surfing. When I got my later teens, I was a national champion sailor for 2 years, surfed for my university, and just always been around the water. So I ended up working in finance in London. Things didn't go too well for me. And I ended up turning to crime, which put me into prison. Instead of sort of being open and honest and trying to seek the help, I decided to take the wrong route, which, you know, I completely regret. So after I lost my job, I was just sort of too proud to ask for help, and I ended up turning to gambling. Through the gambling, I ended up turning to drinks and to drugs, and just my life got completely out of control. I ended up moving some stolen goods. Yeah, I was caught for that, and for a year, I was looking to go to court. And I just kept that to myself, and I was like a pressure cooker, I suppose. And that day that court date came, I just vanished. I disappeared for 5 weeks. And in those 5 weeks, I ended up turning to burglary, which then put me into prison for 3 years.
So you punish them, it's dark, it's miserable, they're fucked, they're broken, they're in a cell. What does that give you? When they get released from prison, which 99% of people do, other than the people that die or take their lives in prison, they're going to be a neighbour. Who do you want? Do you want someone who cannot function in real life? Or do you want someone who's loving and caring and ambitious and driven and passionate and wants to be a citizen and a taxpayer and a father? You know, that's what it's all about, isn't it? The guys in prison and girls, they don't want a lot. They don't want a lot. They just want the basic humanity, respect, not being looked at, not being judged. You know, you've got your worst mistakes written down on a piece of paper, and every 6 months you have to go through that. The worst things you've ever done, no one knows about. Your worst secrets, and you kind of think, what's the fucking point in that? There's just nothing that's going to help people with that. It's just labelling them, criminalising them, making them feel even more worthless than they already do. Whereas if we build strength and positivity, and if we say, do you know what, you're right person, I love you, you know, then that's the first time some people have ever heard it.
It's that moment when you first step into prison, like the unknown. It's just, I remember, like, you're cut away from your family straight away. It was the smell, the noise. It was just a sensory overload, and just, yeah, I just thought that was game over, you know.
When you were in prison, can you recount a situation where you just didn't know what you were going to do anymore?
When I was serving my second prison sentence, there was a point in there where I thought that was it. And it took me a long, long time to get out of this deep, dark hole. I was so close to rolling over and just giving up on life. There were so many negative thoughts running through my head, thoughts about ending it, and it came so close. If I took my life, imagine the pain and suffering that my mum would go through. Taking my own life could destroy my mum. What I did. I brought that upon myself. Ending your life is the easy option. I never had a steady role model in my life. My father died before I was born, about 3 months before I was born. He served in the RAF in the Falklands War. And there's always been a hole in me. I've always felt this emptiness. And when I was about 8 years old, my mum's ex-boyfriend used to beat me with a belt buckle. I'm really lucky to have Georgina, my stepmom, in my life. She came into my life when I was 12 years old and completely transformed our lives. I know things in my mum's personal life were going down the drain, and Georgina came and helped rectify that.
At that time, his mum and I had entered into a relationship. He'd been very protected by his mother, and nobody else had been allowed to help raise him. He hadn't been allowed to have a role model in any way.
And I know I've hurt my mum. I've hurt my mum beyond belief. It's destroying, really, knowing the hurt that she's been through, and that's what I did that. Like, nobody else did that. I put my mum through that.
When the first time the police came, and then we found out the extent of it, I actually didn't talk to David. I didn't want him in my life. I'd had enough.
I wasn't ashamed, because it wasn't my shame. Okay, my son's in prison, but I wasn't ashamed. Having to go and visit him was awful. And I did think that the first time when he came out, he would turn over a new leaf, but he didn't.
I think his mum's always going to believe him, and I'm always going to be the one that's slightly on the outside thinking, that's not true, I don't believe him.
What I've done, like, you know, and I can't take that away from them. Like, I've hurt people, and I know that. Like, I've put both my mums through so much trouble and so much shit, really. Like, it was just nice that they once again start being proud of me and seeing their boy doing what he wants to do, trying to fulfill his dream.
I remember him really clearly because he kind of stood out. He didn't quite fit in. He had a real determination about him. He knew what he wanted to do.
The thing about prison, it's so easy to just let the system take you over and just get lost in the system. And it's hard to stay as an individual. And meeting Sarah Lewis sort of made me change the way I looked at the whole prison system, the prison reform system, and I knew something had to change.
So he first spoke about paddleboarding to me relatively early in terms of our relationship, just as a hobby, something that he really enjoyed doing. I then left, and David kind of developed his ideas and associated more around kind of wanting to raise awareness around prison reform.
I've committed a crime, but it's not who I am. So I wanted to prove to myself that I am capable of so much more. Your mistakes, prison doesn't have to define who you are. So, to prove all those people wrong, went and paddleboarded the 4 longest lakes, set 4 world records, and just got this real thirst just to continue doing that. Attempt more world records, world firsts, and I'm on the journey to do that now. So the whole reason I've taken to the paddleboard and why I keep pushing myself is just because I want to learn more about myself. And that's what the power of adventure does. It teaches me so much about who I am, what I'm capable of, and I want to share that with everybody else as well. I want more people to reconnect with themselves. The Great Green Paddle was completely unique. Nobody's ever completed a carbon neutral, environmentally friendly expedition before. Everything I used was recycled, recyclable. So the paddleboard I used was completely recycled. Everything was found in the skip. My clothes were from a sustainable, recyclable clothing company. The food I used, such as crickets and locusts, were all sustainably sourced. I mean, even the tech I had was made from recycled plastic and wheat fibres. I mean, what I loved about this journey was learning that so many companies are trying to do so much great work to help the environment. And it was just a complete educational journey for me and learning about all these fantastic things that are going on. Literally, my watch I had as well was made from wood. Some of the paddles I used were made from bamboo. It was an unbelievable eye-opener, and it's a journey that I want to keep going and pushing.
So I learned about the Isle of Wight project because I kind of stayed in touch with David a little bit, mainly through Instagram, and I was kind of keeping tabs on on his adventures, what he was getting up to. It was a pretty insane idea to start with. I mean, I didn't realise how crazy of an idea it was until I actually saw the board that he was using. It just sounded like a great idea, it sounded like a really cool way of raising awareness about environmentalism issues. I've not heard of anyone paddleboarding around the Isle of Wight, let alone on one made out of rubbish. I thought the idea of making the entire adventure sustainable was, well, firstly I thought it was probably not possible, and maybe it could have been, I don't know, a statement maybe used for PR purposes, but then actually speaking to David, I realised that he wanted everything from the clothes he was wearing to the transport to be sustainable, and he managed to get hold of an electric camper van, and he was after some sustainable clothing, which I was able to help out with. You know, sometimes in the adventure outdoors industry, there are people that are in it for their own self-interest or for motivations. They want to achieve a challenge to further their own interests or promote their own profile. But actually meeting David and speaking with him about the ethos of the adventure and the whole story of it, how it started with, I think it was a previous adventure up in Scotland. It made me realise that it was entirely sincere, and he really did want to do something about it.
So the Isle of Wight is diamond shaped, and to do it quickly, it means I couldn't hug the shoreline. So I've had to get from A to B and then sort of cutting quite far out to sea. I mean, there was points that you could be over a kilometre off the shore, going against or going with the tide, but there were points where I was having 4-foot waves around me. But then there were other times that I'd be sitting on the beach. I mean, the second day, I was literally on the beach for about 20 hours, waiting for the weather to change and the tides to change. So I didn't really go far that day. The amount of plastic I saw out there as well, whilst I was alone on some very remote beaches, was significant. And it's doing this challenge, I wouldn't have seen that, and I realised actually more has to be done to protect our beach lines. I remember after the first day, I mean, I realised that the challenge was actually a lot tougher than I thought about when I predicted. And I remember sitting on the beach, I was shattered, I was tired, and I remember just looking at the camera, talking to a camera. I just think I've just come so far. Yeah. And I don't know why, I'm feeling a little bit emotional now tonight. I don't know what it is. I felt so lonely, so afraid, and it recalled memories of when I was on the run, when I was meant to go to court and I disappeared for 5 weeks, and memories of sitting in that tiny prison cell. Like, it was memories that I didn't like. It was negative memories, and I shouldn't be feeling like that when I'm living the dream that I want to do. And that's the moment when I realised how powerful adventure is. It pushes me into some depths and deal with demons that I've still got in my mind, and it's things that I can learn to take control of and hopefully overcome and go on to live a much more meaningful life. At that moment on the beach, I wasn't expecting those negative emotions to sort of creep up, but when I was serving my second prison sentence, one of the main things I did was to try and focus on myself and actually learn about who I was. And I read so many self-help books, and I met Dr. Sarah Lewis. And from the moment that I realised adventure was missing from my life when I was in prison, that's when I started a journey of growth. And if I didn't undertake that journey of growth to learn about myself, I don't think I could have dealt with those negative emotions that I had on the beach. I think the best way to summarise the Isle of Wight trip was it was completely and utterly epic. Like, in my mind, I was expecting 5 days of sunshine and calm waters, and it was far from that. The first day, the winds turned against me. The second day, I couldn't paddle. The third day, my leash snapped, I lost my board. The 4th day, I went through St. Catherine's Point where 2 tides hit each other. It was the most scariest thing I've ever done in water. There's St. Catherine's Point! Woo! Making some amazing time, look! Ah, this is awesome. That was the scariest thing I've ever experienced on water. Like, that was terrifying. Definitely made me feel alive.
I saw on his Instagram story that he got into some trouble. Long story short, I think a big wave came, chucked him off the board, leash had snapped, so he's now making his way to shore with not attached to his board, and I think the waves were pretty big at the time, so it could have had a pretty bleak ending. I heard that he was after a new leash, so I scurried around the office, and have a few paddleboards lying around, so I kind of secretly took one of the leashes off it without telling anyone. Sorry, there is still a board out there with no leash. I zoomed over on my motorbike and met up with Dave and handed over a leash, and I think he was pretty relieved.
And when I was 5 kilometers short from the end, I snapped the fin and I couldn't continue the journey. And I thought this was the end, that was it. And I rang my crew, and the support vehicle, which was electric, actually had no charge, so I couldn't get rescued. And I sat on that beach, and I remember I shed another tear, and just thinking that this whole journey had been such an emotional and physical roller coaster. And when I was sitting on that beach alone, I just couldn't accept that I'm 5 kilometers short from the end, that this is the end. I couldn't accept it. Not gonna lie, fucked off. Put a big old slog in today. 56k I did. The moment I got past Bembridge, the wind sort of hit me, died down, punched ride, it was doing alright, died down. Then when I was sort of between Ryde and East Cowes, it really picked up again. I had about 3 kilometers to go. I just wasn't going anywhere. So I rang Sarah, called it in, I was like, I've got to come to the beach. I'm gonna have to sleep on the beach tonight and just do this last 3k first thing in the morning. The tide was changing, it's getting dark. As you can see, the sun's going down. Come in, and the fin's gone. The fin, the attachment is gone. It's just been such a roller coaster today. Been such a roller coaster today. All sorts happened. Ugh, it sucks. It's just 3k. I've been through so much shit on this one. And not to finish it. And I slept on it, and the next morning I thought, you know what? I'm gonna walk it. So I wrapped the leash around my waist, and I walked the last 5 kilometers in chest-deep water, stubbing every stone along the way. And it was in that point that I realized that no matter what life does, it's like you've always got to give it your all. And until you've given it your all, that's the only time you can really accept defeat, but know that you've tried everything you can possibly do. I can't get all this way and not finish. I can get a fin, I can't get a mount. I got one last attempt. I'm gonna walk the shoreline. If I stick to the shoreline, I can get to Cowes. It's 4.3 kilometers. I'll get in the water, attach the board to me, and walk the rest. It's been a tough old trip for this one. One for the adventure book. Another life skill from prison, I guess. Don't give up when the shit hits the fan. There's always a way out, always a solution. Just give it your best. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Done it. Back at Cowes. I decided to do the Great Green Paddle to basically not just undertake the world's first carbon neutral, environmentally friendly expedition, I wanted to show, you know, what all these brands are doing, but I also wanted to raise awareness for Surfers Against Sewage. I didn't actively decide to become an environmentalist or an activist. It just happened to suddenly be part of the journey that I've gone down. So after I did the Isle of Wight, I went over to Iceland to break the world record on their longest lake. But something that I've picked up along the way is that we can do more to help the environment as well and protect the waters, something that's completely changed my life. It's not easy to do what I'm doing, but I just got to keep pushing and keep attempting more records, more world firsts, because it's given me the platform to talk to others about the work that needs to be done.
There aren't that many adventurers that are really thinking about the environment and their impact on the environment. I think a lot of adventurers have motivations that weirdly is not to do with protecting the outdoors, which for me doesn't make too much sense. So it struck a chord with me. I think David sets these ambitious targets for himself, whether it's world records or just huge adventures, expeditions. But I think my interpretation is that the environmentalism side of it is another extension of almost making it harder for himself, perhaps. I do genuinely think that he wants to make a difference and, you know, really wants to create a positive impact on these issues. But I think beyond that, I think it's also just another way of challenging himself.
I think the biggest achievement, and I guess the most unexpected achievement, was that I became Ocean Activist of the Year 2023. An award that I'm just so proud of. Like, it's one of the biggest achievements that I have done since I've left prison, and it's something that I never actually set out to do, not like the world records, the world first that I attempt.
It's an obvious partnership between David and Surfers Against Sewage. It's David's opportunity, our opportunity, to get all adventurers to consider the habitats and the equipment they're using and make sure they make conscious decisions to make sure that what they're doing is the most environmentally sound way for them to be performing in those environments.
It is really great to see an adventurer who's using their platform to talk about environmentalism issues, because it's just not embraced as in the industry as much as you might think.
As an adventurer, it is sometimes hard to consider the environment when you're striving to achieve a goal, and David is certainly not alone with this issue. I've wrestled with it on a few adventures, and you have to find a way. We all have to find a way to put the environment first. In the 52,000 kilometres of adventuring I've done around the world, I've seen in Iceland, in Scotland, in Australia, in South America, in nearly every place I've adventured, that there are huge environmental impact caused by what we do as humans. And our job as adventurers is to make sure that when we go to these beautiful places, we, one, make sure we leave them as beautiful, if not more beautiful than we find them, but also to communicate to the people who are working and enjoying these environments to make sure they do the same. David has rightly been rewarded for his efforts by being named Ocean Activist of the Year 2023. And I can't think of anyone who deserves it more. And I really believe that this is the beginning and a pivotal moment in David's journey as an adventurer, as an environmentalist, and as an activist. And I wish him luck in the future.
There's a lot of lessons that can be learned for the adventure industry from David's story. I definitely think it shows for those people who are starting to take on their own adventures. There's the environmentalism part of it can bring a really impactful side of it, but it also brings together brands and people that really rally behind someone who's spreading such a positive message. And it's nice to move away from this perhaps egotistical side of the adventure industry and actually focus on the things we care about, which is protecting the places we love.
So becoming, an ocean activist and attempting all these world records, it doesn't make up for the harm that I've caused people, I've caused my family and the damage I've done. It is just the cherry on the cake, but it's the whole journey. It's about, I'm now being given a platform to highlight what's important to me. It's about my personal growth. And I hope my story could inspire more people to reconnect with themselves, to reconnect with the great outdoors and find peace within themselves. I found peace through adventure and being out on the water, and I hope that sharing my story, people can also find inner peace.